Hi, this is Matt Thompson. I just wanted to get on, give everyone an update of what's going on with the cases of where I got arrested in my attempts to help Jeff Winehouse. And yeah, it's it's an amazing story. Such a simple little trivial little thing that shouldn't be an issue, but yet it's indicative of how our system has become so out of control and stacked against the citizens in favor of the system. But just as a matter of review, I became friends with Jeff Winehouse over a year ago, and after seeing his stuff on the internet, Jeff Winehouse was the bulletin man, and he was wrongfully convicted in 2012 of assaulting the officer that assaulted him. Was shot twice in the head and twice in the chest, and he's serving 30 years time for the crime of getting shot by the officers. And he was a whistleblower that published bulletins and was working to expose corruption when this occurred. And anyway, I became good friends with Jeff through visiting him. I was visiting him, almost every week down at the prison at Bonne Terre, Missouri. And it was probably the person that was visiting him the most at the time. And on February 4th of last year, I went down for my normal visit. The day before, I'd been in email contact with Jeff, and he was really looking forward to my visit. Wanted to go over all his medications and stuff with me. He wanted people to know about that. And so I got there the next day, and they told me that Jeff was in the hole, and I couldn't see him. And I asked why, and they said because he was under investigation. And I said, why is he under investigation? And they refused to tell me. And so I asked, is there anything I can do? And one of the guards said, well, could see him behind glass if I come back later. So, and I checked into it. Sure enough, even the most hardened multiple murderers in there that are, in the hole, visitors can still see them behind glass. Whereas normally I visited Jeff, just in the open area of the prison. So I did go back and try to get in to see Jeff behind glass, and they told me that no. After they took my driver's license and all my details, no, I couldn't see Jeff, and they couldn't tell me why. And so I left, and this went on for a couple of weeks. And of course, Jeff has lots of followers around the nation. People know that he was wrongfully convicted, and or would like to help him, and so he has lots of friends around the United States. And I think everyone was really concerned about him. And I was very concerned. This went on for like 2 weeks, and or over 2 weeks, and there was no communication. Anyone that called the prison, they told them that they couldn't tell. Jeff was under investigation, and they couldn't tell anything. And Jeff was not even allowed to contact any of his family, any of his friends, or his lawyer. And that's all they would tell us. They told us that he was okay health-wise, but we had no way of verifying that. He wasn't allowed to speak with anyone, even his lawyer. And this was going on and on and on. And so on February the 22nd, I decided to go down to the prison for my normal visit and see what I could find out. And I went in, and they said, no, I couldn't see Jeff. And I said, okay, well, I'd like to speak to the warden then, because something is not right here. And so she said, okay. And I didn't make a big scene or anything. I just waited calmly over in the lobby of the prison. So at this prison in Missouri, state prison, you're not allowed to take any devices, any phones or anything like that into the lobby with you. You have to be on the approved visitors list, have to have lots of background checks before you can even visit. And, you can't take a picture of the front gate or the flagpole and say, well, this is where my loved one is. You can't take your device out of your car. And so I was in there. I didn't have any way of recording or anything. But I didn't make a big scene. I was waiting calmly. And after about 45 minutes, some security guards came down and said that, I probably wouldn't be able to speak to the warden. I needed to leave. There's nothing that the warden could tell me anyway. And I said, well, I really need to find out what's going on here. I need to speak to the warden because something's not right. You can't have a guy that can't even call his lawyer. We need some kind of verification that he's still alive. And so they left, and about 45 minutes later, finally the warden came down with an assistant, and he escorted me out to the breezeway where no one could hear. And he said, Jeff is under an investigation, and that's it. And I said, well, what's he being investigated for? And he said, well, we can't tell you what he's being investigated for. You have no right to be here. You need to leave. And I said, well, I'm on the approved visitors list. I'm kind of his best friend at the moment, and I need to find out something about Jeff. And I said, I'm very concerned that it might be illegal for you to be holding a prisoner, whether he's guilty or not, without allowing him to contact even his attorney for long periods of time. And he said, well, I'm not a lawyer. I wouldn't know. It's none of my business, and I need to leave. And I said, well, I need to find out about Jeff. But he said, well, you need to leave or you're going to be trespassed, and I'm going to have you arrested. And so I left immediately, went out to my car, and took 30 or 45 seconds to get my devices turned back on, check for messages and everything before I got on the road, and then left. I was stopped on the way out of the prison, and they said, I need to leave. And I said, well, I'm leaving, look. And they said, well, you're not leaving fast enough. And I said, okay, let me go and I'll leave faster. And so I left, and went to the restaurant at Hardee's in Bonne Terre, Missouri, and called the governor's office and let them know what was going on, that they were holding a prisoner without allowing any kind of communication. And, I didn't harass anybody or anything at the governor's office. I was polite to them, and they were polite to me. They said the governor was in D.C. at the moment. They'd let him know. So I said, okay. Didn't take very long. And then I talked to Jeff Winehouse's second wife, Valerie. Had asked me to call her, so I called her, and I talked to her for about 20 minutes. And by the time I got done talking to her, they had my car surrounded at the Hardee's restaurant with multiple cop cars, various markings and so forth. I don't even know who all was there, but they came in there, and I was very concerned, some things that have happened recently. So I raised both my hands in the air, and I walked slowly towards the officer, and I said, I'm not resisting anything. And so they started this long process, like something out of the Gestapo, and said I was threatening violence against the prison and wanted my phone. I said, no. I said, I never called the prison. You can look on my phone. So they took my phone and my iPad, and they said that I'd given them permission to go all through everything on there. And I said, no, I didn't. And they said, yes, you did. And so they began accusing me of having all kinds of stuff, nefarious stuff on there that was deleted, and they were going to find it and so forth. Obviously there's nothing bad on there. There's, like I say, there's nothing, I didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing bad on my iPad or my devices, but they were accusing me of all this kind of stuff. And they arrested me and took me to prison, and to the county jail in Farmington, Missouri, and held me there for 24 hours. They said I was being booked on felony harassment. Finally, it took them about 2 hours to come up with that charge. They didn't know what they were going to charge me with when they arrested me. And which, they're supposed to be law enforcement officers. What are they doing if they don't know what law they're enforcing when they're arresting people? And so I spent the night in jail there, and I was released the next day when the 24 hours were up. And no papers were given to me about any charges or any summons to appear, nothing. They just opened the gate and let me out. And so after about 3 months, this was still being held over my head. I could never get any information out of anybody. And for 2 weeks they held my devices, and my phone and iPad were open when they took them. I'm sure they looked through them. They could have kept them open without being locked. I don't know if they did. I don't know, but they were keeping my devices. And I lost my employment contract with the cattle buying company the next day. They heard about this and didn't want that kind of controversy to deal with. They want to focus on what they've got to do, and I understand that. And it was on my record now that I was arrested. Various gig economy type deals that I was doing, I could no longer do, and to this day, it got me stymied. So about April, I requested information. Nothing was happening. I requested information about my arrest from the city of Bonne Terre, and filed a legal sunshine law request with the mayor's office and the chief of police for all the arrest records, the body cams, and everything. And I informed them that they had violated Missouri search and seizure statutes. We were told the day I got out of jail that they had a search warrant signed by the judge for my devices. To this day, I've never seen that search warrant. I don't think it exists. And I informed them that they had violated the Missouri search and seizure statutes, which clearly state that they can't take anything without a lawful search warrant. And to have a lawful search warrant, I've got to sign the paper saying that they took this device. And there was never any paperwork. They just took the devices. But they did give them back to me. About 2 weeks later, I was informed that I could go to the police station and get the devices back. A friend went with me, and when he asked the officer where the search warrant was, he was told that the judge doesn't work for the police, and it's none of his business. He can't have a search warrant. So I'm sure there never was a search warrant. And so I began following up. April 2nd, I first filed this sunshine law request, and followed up in April and May with further requests. They violated all those requests, never provided any information, which they're required by Missouri sunshine law to provide me arrest records and the whole thing. And then by the end of May, I got communication from the city's attorney saying that they couldn't comply with the sunshine law because I was being investigated by the county prosecutor, St. Francis County. So I wrote the county prosecutor, Melissa Gilliam, and this was on May the 21st. I said, I have indicated in writing to the city of Bonne Terre of my intent to pursue them for damages relating to improper law enforcement action. Any attempt by law enforcement to pursue charges against me in response, a full 3 months after the incident, appears to be an attempt to derail my bona fide claim of improper law enforcement actions, including but not limited to violation of Missouri search and seizure statutes 542-276, 542-291, and Sunshine Law Statute 610-010, 610-100. The American Bar Association Standard 3-4 states the following: a prosecutor may condition a dismissal of charges or similar action on the accused relinquishments of a right to seek civil redress only if the accused has given informed consent and such consent is disclosed to the court. The prosecutor should not use a civil waiver in order to avoid a bona fide claim of improper law enforcement action, and such a decision not to file criminal charges should be made on the merits alone and not for the purpose of obtaining a civil waiver. It appeared to me that their charges against me at that point on the ridiculous charge of trespassing was indeed just to block the case against them. So that was on May the 21st, and then apparently, unbeknownst to me, on May the 25th, the prosecutor that I had written filed against me and charged me with trespassing, and sent the summons to an incorrect address. And when I didn't appear in court for the trespassing charge, they charged me with failure to appear and issued a warrant for my arrest. Obviously, they had my correct address. I had sent them this letter, certified mail, with the correct address on it. And so then I had this warrant out for my arrest, and that's still on my record. And I got this failure to appear charge. It's on my record. Everyone that does a search of my name, if I try to get a job or do anything, that's all on my record that I failed to appear. And, it was all appears to be an intentional scam. If it wasn't intentional, nonetheless, the effect is the same. And, so, yeah. Then, it's proceeded. They succeeded in separating this into two cases, and they're using these criminal charges to try to stop the other. I can't afford to fight this stuff with a high priced lawyer, and I think part of why this system has got so out of control is because people, citizens don't get involved in it and have a look at what's really going on. So I felt like, I could just take this thing pro se and try to deal with it. Obviously, the charges against me are ridiculous, but so it proceeded, and my case against them, we had a hearing, and they denied my motion for summary judgment, but it's still an open case. It could go to trial, my charges against them. But obviously, if it does, they're going to try to use the presence of this other case against me in order to block it and say that, I'm only pursuing them to block these charges against me, when obviously it's the opposite. And then I had a hearing October 22nd, and I had filed a motion to dismiss their ridiculous charges against me. And it was very disappointing in the judge in that case, because they never even defined what trespassing, what building I was supposedly trespassed in, or who, where where it was, and how I could be charged with trespassing when I wasn't even on the site when they arrested me, and I was in a public facility which I've been going to regularly for 6 months. It's a ridiculous charge, and but the judge refused to dismiss it, and so they've set a trial date for next April, April the 24th, and then the prosecution argued to extend it further, because although they have lots of lawyers in their office, prosecutor's office, they said that 7 months down the track they were busy. They needed to push it back even farther, and so they're just trying to use this to block everything. But it really is indicative of how this system has become, and they can do whatever they want to and get by with it, and it's a nonsensical thing that shouldn't have to take up court for anybody, but it is what it is. And the charges are real. I could serve 6 months jail time for this and a large fine. And so in my case against them, they never denied my allegation against the police of Bonne Terre, because it's right there in writing. The statutes are very clear. The search and seizure statute was violated. They can't take anybody's stuff without a search warrant. The search warrant has to be signed by a judge. And when the search warrant is served, I've got to sign the paperwork saying that they took my devices. There never was any search warrant. So it's on black and white that they violated the statute. There's no way they can deny it. And they haven't denied it. And the same thing with the Sunshine Law statutes. They've said that it's because there was a criminal case that they don't have to comply with the Sunshine Law statutes. But there's nothing in the law that says that. It's not true. They have to comply with the Sunshine Law statute. So then they've argued in the civil case that I have no standing, even though this happened to me. And they've also argued that the legislature never intended to provide, when they wrote the Sunshine Law statutes, they never intended it to provide a cause of action for an individual if the government violated the Sunshine Law statute. So, what purpose would the law be if there's nothing a citizen can do if the authorities violate the statute? I mean, that's the only purpose. I mean, if the law says that authorities have to only have the power to search and seizure under such and such stipulations, and and the authorities violate this, and there's nothing the citizens can do about it, why do we even have a legislature? I mean, if the authorities have full control, why do we have to pay to have courts? It costs a lot of money to have the courts and the legislature, and if they're meaningless, why do we have them? We might as well just let the police or the dictators so they can do what they want to do. Why are we paying for all this other nonsense? And so that's the case. You know, it's held out for another 6 months, and of course my record is all stymied in the meantime. It's hard for me to do anything, and you know, it's a silly little deal, but it is what it is. And this is going on over and over and over all through our society, and most people can't be bothered to look into the cases, and that's why these lawyers and judges have been getting by with what they're doing, because you know, nobody talks about it. And when you get into a case, they all say, well, you're not supposed to talk about it publicly, but I think we need to. People need to be aware of what goes on, and that's the reason that I'm talking about it today. So I appreciate your time, and we'll keep you posted as what goes on. Thank you very much.